The forest was alive, breathing, whispering, watching. It seemed to have a mind of its own, an ancient consciousness that had seen countless souls wander through its depths. Mark, an avid hiker, felt a tremor of fear. He had always prided himself on his sense of direction, but now, that confidence was slipping away. The sun, a fading memory, cast long, eerie shadows. He was lost, hopelessly lost. The towering trees seemed to close in on him, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out. He had been so sure of himself. The trail was well marked, the map clear. But now, the landmarks he had noted were nowhere to be seen. It was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. But the forest had played its tricks, twisted his path, led him astray. Every turn seemed to lead him deeper into the labyrinth of trees, each one looking more like the last. Now the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Panic gnawed at his resolve. The once familiar sounds of the forest now seemed menacing, each rustle and snap a potential threat. He stumbled forward, desperate for a sign of civilization. A road, a house, anything. His mind raced with thoughts of what might be lurking just out of sight. Just something to pierce this suffocating darkness. The weight of the forest pressed down on him, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. Then, through the trees, he saw it. A light. A faint, flickering glow. It was distant but unmistakable, a beacon of hope in the oppressive gloom. Hope surged through him. He ran. His legs, though weary, found new strength. The light grew brighter, and with it, the promise of safety, of escape from the forest's grip. The house stood alone, shrouded in mist and shadows. It seemed to breathe with the forest, an ancient entity that had seen countless seasons come and go. The air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. It was old weathered wood creaking in the wind. The structure seemed to groan under the weight of its own history. Mark hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of the years pressing down on him, a tangible sense of foreboding. Something felt off. But the light beckoned, warm and inviting. It cut through the gloom like a beacon of hope. It promised comfort, a respite from the cold and the unknown. Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself against the unease that gnawed at his gut. He knocked. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness. The door opened with a creak that sent shivers down his spine. A woman stood there, smiling. "Lost, dear?" she asked, her voice as smooth as honey. Her eyes, however, held a depth that made Mark's skin crawl. They seemed to pierce through him, seeing more than he was comfortable with. He nodded, relief washing over him. She ushered him in with a gesture that was both welcoming and unsettling. The warmth of the interior was a stark contrast to the chill outside. Come in, you look like you've seen a ghost." Her words were meant to comfort, but they only added to the eerie atmosphere. The house seemed to close in around him, the walls whispering secrets he couldn't quite hear. Two men sat by the fireplace, rough-looking, but their smiles seemed genuine. The fire cast flickering shadows on their faces, making their expressions hard to read. Relief gave way to unease. Their eyes held a strange glint, a hunger. It was as if they were sizing him up, evaluating him for some unknown purpose. He pushed the thought away. He was safe now. Or so he thought. The warmth of the fire and the presence of others should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like a trap, slowly closing in. The warmth of the fire was deceptive. It seemed to offer comfort, but there was an underlying menace in its flicker, a sense of foreboding that made his skin crawl. The house felt cold, a chill that seeped into his bones, making him shiver uncontrollably. The walls seemed to whisper secrets, secrets that were better left unheard. The aroma of something cooking filled the air. It smelled strange, wrong. It was a scent that was both familiar and alien, a mix of herbs and something else, something he couldn't quite place. He tried to ignore it. The woman, Martha, she called herself, brought him a bowl of stew. Her eyes were cold, calculating, as if she knew something he didn't. He ate mechanically, his eyes darting around the room. Something was off. The taste was off too. It was as if the food was laced with a hidden threat, a silent warning. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly, terribly wrong. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves outside seemed to amplify his paranoia. He excused himself, needed a moment. The air outside was no better, thick with an oppressive silence that seemed to press down on him. He found himself in a hallway. Pictures lined the walls, old faded photographs of people he didn't recognize, yet their faces seemed eerily familiar. Faces stared back at him. Their eyes seemed to follow him, watching his every move, judging him silently. A cold dread gripped him. He had to leave. The walls seemed to close in on him, the air growing thicker, suffocating. He stumbled towards the door, desperate to escape the unseen horrors that lurked within. He turned to leave, but froze. A sound, a muffled cry. It came from a door at the end of the hall. He approached slowly. The smell from the kitchen intensified. Nausea rose in his throat. He put his ear to the door. Silence. Then a thud. He had to know. He reached for the doorknob. His hand trembled. He took a deep breath and turned the handle. The basement stairs yawned before him. Darkness. The smell hit him full force. Rotting meat. Blood. He gagged. He stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He should leave. Run. But the cry. He had to know. He took a step onto the first stair, then another. The darkness below seemed to reach up for him. He descended slowly. Each step creaked in protest. The smell grew stronger, more pungent. He covered his mouth and nose with his sleeve. His eyes strained in the darkness. Then he saw it. A light. A single, flickering bulb. It illuminated a scene of unimaginable horror. Body parts hung from hooks. Blood pooled on the floor. His stomach lurched. He vomited. Panic seized him, gripping his heart with icy fingers. He stumbled back, his foot catching on the step, sending him off balance. He fell, tumbling down the remaining stairs, each impact jarring his senses. The sound echoed in the darkness, amplifying his fear. He lay there, gasping for breath, footsteps above, heavy, deliberate. They were coming closer. He had to get out, escape this nightmare. He scrambled to his feet and ran towards the other end of the basement, heart pounding. A door. Locked, no way out. He rattled the handle, desperation lending him strength. It wouldn't budge. He was trapped, utterly. He turned to face his pursuers, dread filling his soul. The door burst open, light flooded in, blinding him. He shielded his eyes. Silhouettes formed in the doorway. "Police!" a voice boomed. Relief washed over him. He was saved. A figure stepped forward, tall, imposing, a badge glinting on his chest. "It's all right, son," the officer said. "We've got you." The officer extended a hand. Mark reached out, hope flickering in his chest. Their hands met. The officer's grip was strong, reassuring, but as Mark looked into the officer's eyes, his blood ran cold. He recognized the glint, the hunger. He was not saved.